File structure and setting up your canvas. Welcome to this new lecture. Before I start explaining how the image editor works, I'd like to show you how I set up my files and folders on my computer. So on my PC, I have the folder named Documents, and in the Documents folder I have my project folder, and in this case it's called Blender Udemy. In there I have a Models, Render, Sketches and Textures folder. Let's go to the Models folder, and here I have all the models. In this case Paint Your Well. This is the Blend 1 file, it's a backup Blender makes itself. I have an old folder, and in there I save older versions of my model. And I do that because I can make a mistake during modeling, or Blender can crash and can lose my files. And in that case I also have an older file that I can jump back to. And then I have the render folder here. Here I save all my renders. So first renders, the one we made in the previous lecture. I have sketches. Here I save all the sketches I made. This is the well we made, and this is a well we make in lectures coming. And then I also have a textures folder where I save all my textures. Here's the texture we made before, and also the HDRs are saved in here, so the ones for the background. Now let's open our latest project file in a models folder, Paint Your Well. And hey, what happened? This is purple, so the texture must be gone. And that of course happened because we placed all our files and textures in different folders, and now Blender doesn't know where to look for the textures. Have a look when we go to the shaders menu, textures is turned on and it turns purple, so the texture is somehow not loaded in. So let's fix this. Let's go to the shading layout, and here under the image editor in this texture slot you see the name of the texture, but the texture is not showing up. It's even there in the list. If you click on it, it still is not showing up. So what we have to do is we have to reload this image, let Blender know where the image really is. Click N on the second menu and go to Image. It brings up the properties of the texture. You can see the name there, and next to it there's a button with a folder on it. You can click on that, which opens up this file browser, and then we have to go to the texture folder again. So let's go up and textures. And what texture are we looking for? Texture Well Small Base Color, that's that one. So click on it and click Accept. And now we have the texture on our model again. Yay, nice. But we need one more texture. When we go to the shading menu here and choose rendered shading, everything turns purple again. Aha, the sky texture is missing. But there's a different place to look for that than the texture we use on models. So let's go to the shader editor here, and instead of object, choose world. And here we find the texture we need. It's connected to the background is connected to the world output, which makes the sky texture. And here also we have a, let's make this bigger, a folder button. So let's click that, and then the file browser will show up again. So let's go up in the hierarchy and click on textures. We had two versions of the sky texture, so let's see which one did we use. 1K. Okay, so click on 1K and then open image. And now the background has a texture again. Okay, all set. And that brings us to the next part of this lecture, and that's all about the image editor. Let's first hit N to remove the second menu. And we've talked about the image editor before, but we'll go a little bit more in depth now. We will make a new file in a while, but first we have to save this one, because we just reattached the textures. So let's go to Save and save the file. There is a part of the screen missing in this recording, but hit File and then New and go to General. Then go to the texture paint layout. Then make this a little bit bigger by scrolling with the middle mouse wheel. You can also press Home on your keyboard. So here we have a look up button. Here you can see all the textures that are loaded in the different slots. And then here we have a new button. We also have an open button to open existing textures. They will show up in the canvas here. But let's click on New first and see what shows up. So we are making a new image. It says that here. We can give it a name. Let's name it texture, just to keep it simple. We can give it a width and a height. We made that 256 in the previous lecture, but it's a little bit too low for modern day game engines. Most of them need a 1K or 2K texture, so that's 1024 or 2048 pixels or even higher. Let's leave that for what it is now, and let's go to the next step. That's color, where you can change the base color of your texture. I'll leave it on black for now. Here's the alpha tick box. Most of the times we leave it off in this course. That's for textures or objects where part of them are transparent, and we don't use that much in this course. And later in this lecture, I will explain generated type. You have a few options here, but we'll leave it on blank for now. Tick box is 32-bit float. Most images are 8-bit, but when you need a wider range, so more color and more value, you can use 32-bit float. This is used in HDR images, like the background in the sky, for example. Well, let's hit OK, and let's make this texture. OK. It's a little bit big, so let's hit Home, so it will fit in the image editor's viewport. Now let's hit N to go to the second quick menu where we have all the brush options. Then let's select Image, and here we have Source Generated. That means that we made it ourselves. There are other options available, but it's not really important now. Next up is X and Y for the X and Y dimensions of the image. Then we have float buffer, it's a 32-bit image again, which I already explained. Blank, UV grid and color grid, I will explain that later in this lecture. And color, I have explained that one as well. Then we have color space, that's the way Blender will render colors on screen. It's a bit simply put, but okay. And Filmic is the widest range we have, so the lightest light and the darkest dark will still have some detail in them. We'll come back on this later as well. When I save this texture, a part of these options will be baked into the image, so you can't change them anymore. So let's save this texture in a proper folder. Let's first find the Documents folder, so click here on Documents. Then the Blender Udemy folder. And let's go to the Textures folder. Texture _ test, so I'll know that this is just a test texture and save it as an image. And now part of the options are baked in and you can't change them anymore. Let's make this a little bit wider so we can see if we can read everything. Yes, we can. Okay. So next up is the View tab. Let's have a look at that. So the first part is the display part, and we have an aspect ratio X, Y here. We can change them separately. I don't know why, because you will stretch the image. I don't think that's useful. Repeat, that's very useful for making tiles. I'll explain that a little bit later. And then the annotations, that's below here. It's something we don't use. It's to make notations on screen. For now, don't look at it. The first tab is the Tool tab. That's where you find the active tool, in this case the brush. But that's something for the next lecture. Now let's first click on N to hide the second menu. Then let's click on the X here to remove the texture from the texture slot. So we have a clean canvas again. Hit New again, so we have a new image, new texture. Let's name it Texture _ Generated. Let's leave the width and height for what they are. Let's leave the color for what it is. Let's leave alpha off. But the generated type, that's what we want to talk about. We have UV grid and color grid. Let's do UV grid first. Leave 32-bit float off and hit OK. And this will generate a UV grid. And it has squares. And let me zoom in a bit. It has crosses with different colors in there. And let me explain the use for this. When you have a model and you want to have more detail, and let me first turn off the overlay because then the camera won't be in the way. So again, for example, if you want to have more detail on this part of your model than on the other parts, and an example for this is when you have a character and this part is the face, then you might want to have more detail here because the face is the focus point of a character. You can improve the pixel density on this part by going to Edit mode. And then let's first turn the overlays on again so we can see what we're doing. And here where the editor selector is, sorry you can't see it now, go to UV editor, and cubes already have a UV map. Now choose the shading layout, because we need to connect the texture to the principled BSDF shader of the cube. I hit Shift A to bring up the Add Nodes menu, and then on the textures, choose Image Texture. Let's put it here and connect the color output to the base color input of the principled BSDF shader. Then choose the texture named Texture Generated, the one we made earlier, and look at the cube. We now have the generated texture on the cube. Let's go back to Texture Paint. Okay, turn off the overlays again, so that nothing obstructs our view. And all 6 faces of our cube have the texture on it in the same proportion. So every square on every face has the same size. And now when you want to have more detail on, for example, this face, and let's select the UV editor in the Editors menu. And here, go to Edit mode. Now, turn on the overlays again. And with Face Select, select the front face. Now on the UV map that's the only face showing up because it's selected on the model. You can now hit A to select it, then hit S to scale it and scale it up. And then the pixel density on this part is much higher than on that part. Now let's select all faces by hitting A. And in the UV editor you see the front face overlapping the other faces. Normally it's something you wouldn't do, at least not when you paint your own texture, for example. You only do that when you want to repeat a certain part of a texture. So in this case it doesn't really matter, but okay. So that's the way we use this. Another way we can use this is the other way around. When you already have unwrapped something or auto unwrapped something, sometimes the pixel density is then too high. Then you can go to the UV editor, select that face and scale it down until the pixel density is the same as the other parts of the model. Now all the faces on the model have the same pixel density again. So that's what the generated types are for, to be able to see the pixel density of every part of your model. And then there's the other texture, the other generated type. So let's hit N to open a second menu, go to Image and here choose Color Grid. Here we have a grid with codes, so letters and numbers on it. And with that you can see which part of your model has which part of the texture. When you want to know where part of your texture is on your model, you can use this grid, and it's very convenient when you have more complex models and you don't know where parts of your texture or where your UV maps exactly are. That's what I use it for. You might use it maybe in this course, but I'm not sure about that. We'll see. Okay, so that's the end of this lecture. If you want, you can save this project, but we didn't really make anything, we just showed stuff. I'll leave you now, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye bye!